12. So Lauren, if you don't mind hitting record. Got it? Awesome.
Yep.
Okay, so welcome everybody. This is our May webinar. My name is Tracy Reynolds. I'm a brand strategist here at Marketing for ECPs, and we're going to teach you how to build an Instagram strategy in 20 minutes. So we've broken it down into 4 easy steps, and we'll walk through that with you. Of course, building an entire Instagram strategy or presence, it's going to take more than 20 minutes. It's going to take consistent effort, and it's something you do have to keep up with, but you can absolutely get started on a strategy in 20 minutes. And that's what we're going to break down for you guys, so you can get a head start. You'll know what to post, you'll know who you're speaking to, so you're going to get a head start that way. Of course, we want to thank Johnson & Johnson, who's our very generous sponsor. We wouldn't be able to run all of these fabulous webinars without their support. So big thank you and shout out to them. If you guys do have any questions, you can pop them in the chat box or the question feature. It's just on the right-hand side. We do only have 20 minutes, but hopefully we'll get a chance to get to some of your questions. And yeah, you'll definitely want to stay tuned to the very end, because we have a giveaway, which is for everyone, as well as a contest winner to announce. So yeah, without further ado, I'm going to hop on in and introduce our panelists for you. Perfect. So we have Lauren Muirhead. She is our brand and content strategist here at Marketing for ECPs. She's ran both our client platform. She's done our client the platform where you get all of your social media posts. She's also done our internal brands. So everybody, I'd like to welcome Lauren.
Hi, everyone. Super excited to be here.
Thanks, Lauren. We also have Tyler Kemp. So he is our social media guru. He's the manager of brand engagement at Marketing for ECPs. And he's kind of the guy we turn to. He started out our social media department, and he's got a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience, especially in Instagram. So welcome, Tyler.
Tracy.
All right. So let's hop right in, because we do only have 20 minutes. So we're going to start off with step 1. So who are you? So Lauren, would you like to kick us off with this slide?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much, Tracy. So like Tracy mentioned, we're really going to break it down into 4 steps. And the first step is obviously defining who are you. So, your brand is so much more than simply just your practice name or signage that you have displayed around your practice. Every time you talk, write, design, comment, share on behalf of your brand, you're really representing your brand voice. And so it's extremely important to determine, who your brand is at the foundational level, so that you can begin to really build up from there as we go through this process. And so how do you do that? How do you actually determine who you are? One of the things that we like to do on the social media team is really define your voice. So think about, if your brand was a person, who would they be? And some things that you can kind of think about are, what are your brand's likes, dislikes, goals, attitudes, any buzzwords that you want associated with the brand, or even any phrases that are off limits. And this really helps to develop that brand personality. Your target market is going to find it a lot easier to connect with your brand when they can identify with those personality traits. And so when it comes to actually figuring out what those are, it's really good to get your team involved. They're the ones that work within your business on a daily basis. They really understand who you are, and so they can really help to, come up with those traits that you can portray with your content. So just as an example, you might describe your brand as bubbly, upbeat, friendly, and reliable. And so these are words that you really want to keep in mind every single time you're creating that content, to make sure that you're accurately representing your business every single time. It also ensures that your brand is really recognizable and that you'll stand out from the crowd. And again, it all really just goes back to consistency. It's not just photos and videos that you're posting. You're really, putting together the whole package, the way that you talk about your brand as well.
Definitely. I love that, Lauren. I love that you talked about being consistent, because it's so important to know who you are and consistently showcase to your clients that you're that same voice. I know a lot of the time we do exercises where we talk about, if your brand was a person or you walked into a barbecue, how would you introduce yourself to a bunch of strangers? So once you have that identification of who you are and what you want to portray, it really helps frame your social media. And then of course, I'll get Tyler to lead us into the next step. So once you know who you are, it's all about who you're talking to. So I'll get Tyler to talk about our target audience persona.
Yeah, so once you know your voice, you need to make sure that there's a purpose to it. We always say posting with a purpose, and that there should be a reason behind every post that you do. And first of all, it's to build your brand voice, it's to tell your story. But if the person that you're speaking to or the person that you're trying to speak to, you're not properly reaching them, or when you are reaching them, you're not actually engaging them, it's hard to determine success or see real results and success out of your social media presence. So once you've developed who you are, then you want to ask, who are we trying to communicate to? This doesn't mean that you are trying to single out one person that you are trying to talk to. It's just talking to everyone is talking to no one. So we really want to help define the language that we're using in the captions and what kind of photos that we're using as well. Because if you can keep someone in mind and say, for example here, Joanne, the fictional persona that we've created here. If we're thinking Joanne, someone who's in that 40 to 54 range, she seems active, she's a mom with kids, we want to be thinking about what is going to identify the most with her. So we're likely not going to choose images that don't relate to her at all. Maybe men in their 60s. That's probably not going to relate to her because her parents are probably older than that, and she's not in that same age zone there. So it's really kind of keeping that into consideration, and also the types of imagery you use as well. If you're trying to connect with someone who is in that active zone, you're probably not going to show a bunch of photos or talk about a bunch of content that's constantly sitting behind a computer or being inactive or kind of just something that doesn't relate that way. So if you can get your content in front of this audience by targeting your hashtags and finding out where they're going to be and getting your content there, and then give them something that they can identify with, that's where you start to see engagement. That's where you start to see people liking those posts and following you, because they feel like a sense of trust, like you're communicating your message to them, and they're also getting back something that's interesting to them, which kind of leads to step 3. What is important to communicate to your audience? So we call them content pillars. As corny as it sounds, it's the pillars that hold up the rest of your content. So it's the most important 3 things to talk about that are going to continually define your brand. Both of you talked about consistency in the first slide. This is to make sure that your consistency is defined before you actually start your strategy. If you can come up with those consistent content pillars, for example, family focused, education focused, and community focused. If you make sure that all of your content consistently focuses around those 3 pillars, you can feel very confident that you're going to be communicating your voice, what's important to you. So that's going to come across that way. And that's where you mix in the second slide there, where it's, okay, but what does my audience want to know about? So if community focused is one of your pillars, and that's something very important to you, you're a part of you're a part of community organizations, or your company donates to certain charities. Think about the charities and the organizations that your audience is going to be most interested in, something that's going to relate to their age group. If we're trying to target a mom who's in her young 40s, and we might assume that their kids are probably starting to play sports at about that time. If you support a sports organization or youth sports through, that is amazing to communicate, because not only is it going to be talking about what you do and communicating your brand story and what's important to you, but it's also going to relate to your audience. So that's kind of how you tie it all back into play, and make sure that you're not talking about too many things, because it's the kind of the same concept, Trace, about when you said walking into a barbecue. Picture it that way, that you're walking in, you want to introduce yourself and tell and create that connection. If you walk in and tell the 10 most important things about you, you're going to walk away from that conversation and people are going to wonder, that person was all over the place. I don't know what they were talking about. But if you choose to come in and introduce yourself and kind of create that sense of trust and connection with some of the three most important things about you, that's the ability for them to get to know you. It's the same concept on social media. Let them get to know you, let them get to know the most important things about you, and stick to those over and over. Don't repeat yourself, but find different ways to say the same things. That's how you're going to keep that consistency.
Yeah, I love that, Tyler. And you want to know what else I love about content pillars is that once you define them, it makes it so much easier for yourself. So if you just define family focus, education, community, that way you only need to continue to slot those in. So every week it's not, oh my God, what am I going to post? There's a million things out there. It's simply like, okay, what is my family focused post for this week? Or what, I haven't talked about education this week, like what new technology have we brought into the practice that I'd love to speak about? Or again, Tyler, like you mentioned, community focus. How are you related back to the community? Is it sports? Is it even just making somebody's day in your community can tie into that vertical? So it helps you so much stay organized, stay consistent, and continue to bring that brand message that's going to appeal to your target audience, as Tyler mentioned. So the pillars, I would say, are the most important thing to define before you start. It's going to save you so much time. You're not going to be scrambling around trying to figure out what to post. And of course, go ahead.
Just tying on to that, you'll always be posting with a purpose if you define those content.
Yes.
You're always posting about one of them. Then there's always going to be a purpose to continue to define your voice throughout your posts.
Yes, I love that. You don't want to slap anything out there. It's going to confuse your target market. Like if you just put whatever out there, you want people to know who you are when you post. And something that really ties into this, which is what Lauren's going to talk about, is pulling it all together. So visually, how to translate these pillars into an Instagram grid.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, this is the last step. We're really going to be taking, your brand voice that I discussed earlier, your target audience, and the content pillars and kind of pulling them all together into a visual grid. And so when you're actually going about doing this, it's really important to think to yourself, am I accurately representing the brand voice that I've set out for myself? Are my posts accurately representing the three content pillars that I have already put together? And like you said, Tracy, that's how we make sure that our content is staying, on track and always representing our brand. And so, let's take a look at the 4ECP's grid here. This is an example of how we really pull everything together. As you can see, just by looking at this grid, visually, we've got, all of the 4ECP's brand colors and persona accurately represented. For example, if you were scrolling through your Instagram feed and you saw one of our posts, you wouldn't really need to look at our Instagram handle to know what brand it's coming from or what company it's coming from. So you want your brand to be really, easily recognizable. And that's kind of how you do it, by making sure your brand colors are accurately represented with each post. In terms of our content pillars, we have three, main content pillars that we kind of focus on within 4ECPs. Our first one is company focused. And so if we look at the grid here, you can see we have a few, focused on our team members and our company culture. We're showcasing our clients. Our second pillar is education focused. And so we represent that really through, the information about the services we offer. You can see, looking at this grid, we have a couple of educational posts. We also have some marketing tips and tricks. And then our last one is all about kind of our giveaways and our inspirational content. And so you can see that we have that kind of represented through, the eye art that we have and some of the inspirational quotes, that we write in the captions as well. And so really, what it comes down to is making sure that, your images also align with the captions that you're writing. I mentioned previously that your brand isn't just the photos or videos that you post, it's really tying it all together. And so that's really how you do it, to make sure everything aligns. And of course, making sure that your persona is accurately represented as well. I think it's important to note too that, you don't need a graphic designer to have an amazing on-brand grid. There's lots of resources that you can utilize. There's free tools such as Canva, but one of the main things that it really comes down to is just making sure that the imagery that you choose is, representing your brand voice, and kind of like Tyler mentioned when he was talking as well, making sure that it's the type of content that your target market will resonate with and actually want to see. And it's very helpful to try to pick images that, like I said, have some of your brand colors in them, so that when people are looking at the whole cohesive grid together, kind of like the 4ECPs one, they can see your brand in that content. And again, the individual posts are also easily identified as well.
I'll add on to one thing you said there, Lauren. The fact is that if you could take a look at this grid, you would instantly know that it's 4ECPs. Something to note on here is that the 4ECPs logo isn't anywhere on here. And that's just something that I wanted to point out, because I think that a very common idea of how to achieve that brand consistency is, let's put our logo on everything. Logos, sharing your logo isn't a bad thing, but it doesn't have to be on there to really create that brand presence. We haven't done it here, but it's also very clear right away what brand it is. Just a little side note there, that I often get questions about that. How often should logos and our company branding be used? Use it sparingly, use it the right way to get your message across.
Yeah, totally. Like I said, there's so many ways to represent your brand. It's not just your name, your signage. It's so much more than that.
Definitely. And another way this ties into our pillars is creating a visual grid makes it so much easier when you've defined these pillars and you're also planning a little bit ahead of time. So you can kind of know, like, okay, we have this type of post here. We might not want to put one exactly the same right next to it. Kind of giving yourself a little bit of breathing room to have an idea of what you've got coming up is just going to really help the cohesiveness of the look and feel of your brand. So it does take a little bit of time ahead of time, but then once you've got it all planned out, you're cruising. And it's all done, and you can kind of add in if you need to. You can add into your stories if something happens exciting, in the clinic that you want to share, but giving yourself a little bit of time and putting some thought in ahead of time to really nail down this strategy will just kind of relieve that stress of like, oh, I need to post on social media today. But no, you've already got it. You've already planned it all out. So awesome. Let's move on to our key takeaways. So we're just going to quickly wrap up everything we talked about here. So first thing is to define, who are you? So who are you as a brand? Really get your brand voice nailed down, get some words that describe you, and then continue to speak as that brand. Who are you talking to? So again, who's that target audience? Get a target persona. Even do like we had on that slide, like maybe grab her name or his name, a picture, some of their interests, so you can really think about that person as you're writing the caption and while you're picking your photos or your images or designing. Of course, what's important to communicate to your audience. So this is where we bring in the pillars. So those are all like the key messages. We recommend sticking to 3. It works really well with an Instagram grid being in the row of 3. So kind of picking the 3 top things that you want to communicate to your target audience based on their values. And then of course, pulling it all together, that's just about elevating your grid. So pulling in your brand colors, making sure the images that you choose are strategic, that they all align with the pillars is really going to just get you that step up, just look that much more professional. Guys, did you want to add in anything else to those key takeaways?
I think you covered it.
Awesome. All right, so we do have a couple minutes here. I know we had a couple of questions that they're eager to ask. So first one is about posting days. So what days do you guys recommend posting? Is there a particular day that performs better? What do you guys think?
Yeah, so there's actually a report that a company called Sprout Social, who's a hosting service that we use, they put out a report letting everyone know the top dates to be posting on what platforms. And Tuesdays and Thursdays for the medical niche community have been shown as the top days to post. That's also really nice because it kind of spreads out your content throughout the week. And yeah, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then in terms of the actual times to post on those days, scheduling programs and more free ones or cost-effective ones like Hootsuite or Planoly, they'll actually give you some data on when's the best time on those days to post to get your best engagement as well.
Perfect. Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great starting place. And of course, you always have to look at your personal data. Just because it's best overall, maybe your audience connects best when you post something on Fridays. So it's a great place to start, but always, look at your data and you can manipulate it from there to get your best results. Thanks, Tyler. All right, we have one more question, and it's regarding the target persona. So Tyler, on our slide, we did just have one. A lot of people may think, well, I don't treat just one patient or have just one client. How can I define it to just one person? What would you say?
Sometimes your main persona can encapsulate numerous personas. I kind of made mention to it when we were talking about the example there, but a lot of times if your persona kind of sits in that mothers or decision makers of the house in that 35 to 50 range, oftentimes not only will they be making decisions for their children and booking those appointments, but they also might be making recommendations to their parents or friends as well. So targeting that one audience member who is probably going to be the most influential to getting more patients in your door is probably the best choice. But that doesn't mean that you can't have a couple of different personas. If you just can't decide on the one most important, just make sure they're evenly represented throughout the grid. You just don't want to confuse your audience as to who are you talking to. So you don't want to have 4 or 5 different personas, but it's best when you can narrow it down.
Yeah, and I love what you said on that slide, that if you're talking to everybody, you're talking to nobody. So you do really need to, it's hard, but you need to narrow it down, because that way you're going to get the best connection. They're going to identify with that post, and it's just going to perform a lot better if you're speaking to one particular person. Awesome. Thanks, guys. I think we are out of time for questions, but we do have a few other exciting things to get to. So announcements. So free summer social media post downloads. So we did create a bunch of great social media posts that you guys can use in your own social media feeds. If you guys would like to download these, they will be in the email that will go out after this webinar with the recording. We'll also have a little section there so you can download these posts. They're super cute, they're fun, they're great for summer. So I definitely recommend downloading those. You can also check them out on our website, but they will be in the email that'll be going out shortly after this webinar. And our announcement is we did have a contest for a 1-hour free social media consultation. So the winner is Louise at Belzai Eye Care. I hope I said that right. So if you're on the line, you are the winner, and we will reach out to you shortly to get you set up. I believe it's a consultation with Tyler. So yeah, thumbs up. It'll be Tyler. So we really look forward to doing that. And thank you everyone who participated in our contest as well. Awesome. So that is the end of our webinar. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate you guys staying on the line with us. Also, of course, we do more than just social media at Marketing for ACPs. We do a full marketing landscape. So if you would like to book a demo with Trudy, she's one of our co-founders. Her email is right there, and she would love to talk to you. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. That's the end of our webinar, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Hey, guys.